Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Doing great. So, first of all, my first question is if you had to choose a novel that you read in high school to be a professor of with graduate schools, do you have one in mind that you would choose?
I would probably choose A Clockwork Orange.
Oh, interesting.
I love that book. I love that novel. Um, so yeah, that would be my go-to, I think.
Yeah, because I love, like I said, I was like, maybe I want to go to graduate school and just talk about The Great Gatsby in
Hmm.
class at length because it was so interesting watching, the parallel between everything going on in his life and then cutting back to them just like talking about F. Scott Fitzgerald.
Right.
And when you do get to like play around with like those more comedic moments where it is like he's gotten news that he's dying and then it's like, well, now I got to go teach about, the roaring 20s to these
Hmm.
kids who don't care. Where do you find the joy of those comedy moments? Like what side of it is more interesting for you to kind of play?
Well, I like that. I mean, he's not entirely right about his perspective on the book, or he is. I mean, who can say, right? It's a matter of opinion. It's all subjective. But the idea that he kind of worships Gatsby as this sympathetic figure is the very sort of obvious ruse of the novel, if you
Mm-hmm.
will, you know, and the class immediately calls him on it. You
Yeah.
know, why do you think Gatsby's this amazing person? And I think that's fun. And I loved playing caught and
Yeah.
challenged, you know. Hey, I'm in charge and I'm going to teach the book in a way that is really more about my opinion of the book than the book itself and how obnoxious that is and how they kind of call him on it almost immediately.
Yeah, and I also love that he's so bad at explaining kind of what he wants to do and like his vision for things. Like when he
Hmm.
talks to this young girl and he uses Lolita as an example, and she's like, "Well, that's about a pedophile," and he's like, "No, no, 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 just like a younger girl," and it's just like he's bad
Yeah.
about word choice, and I think that is so interesting to see in a character when everyone else clearly knows how to like talk and get around things around him.
Mhm.
But
He's a bullshit artist.
yeah, he
He's a
is.
bullshit artist with imposter syndrome. So he knows, he's well aware, and he's worried. If he has any neurosis, it's that he sucks.
Yeah.
Um, he doesn't care about dying. He just cares about not sucking, and he kind of does suck. So yeah.
Yeah, he 100% does. But here's the thing. I saw you on stage. I saw you in Leopoldstadt.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
to see, the difference of like that versus Robbie and Oppenheimer versus something like this where they're all three like at times subdued men, but they're all very, very different in how they approach kind of talking to people and interacting with individuals. Do
Mhm.
you as an actor have a specific kind of approach that you like to do when you are building those characters out to figure out how they all differ from one another?
Well, they do all differ,
Mhm.
on paper. I get a lot of credit for following direction and embodying what's written. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, there are times, believe me, where I elevate what's written and I take more joy in the credit I get for that, because those are my ideas on screen. But a lot of times, and in the case of Lousy, and certainly in the case of Leopoldstadt and Oppenheimer, it's really the writing that I just try to honor and move the story forward using the writing, and honor the writing. But I don't like to cover the same ground. My
Hmm.
favorite actors don't. And I believe that's what my purpose is as an actor, is just not to do the same damn thing over and over again. It's a bit of a survival technique because I know that just playing me is boring.
Hmm.
If I did that, I'd have a much shorter lifespan as an actor. Switching it up and being, a chameleon, if you will, has kept me going.
Yeah, and I do love in Lousy, first of all, I love his relationship with the woman asking him to pay his medical bill
Mhm.
because, she goes from calling him, she just calls him Carter, then it's Professor Carter, then it is Lazy Carter, and she just keeps kind of insulting him because he's
Yeah.
not paying. But it does lead to, at the end, probably the one moment where I was like, yeah, this man is 100% right now, which is like the ending of this movie when the doctor messed up and he's like, well, you're gonna fix it, right? Like, I'm not fighting something that I didn't do. It wasn't my
Right.
mistake.
I'm not paying to be told that I'm dying,
Yeah.
and that it's wrong. Yeah, no, that's a great little moment in the film. He is, he's righteously angry and feels that he's been taken advantage of.
Yeah.
And
And
I think the question that I hope audiences ask in that moment is he angry about that he has to pay still, or is he angry that he's not dying? Is he angry that like now he doesn't have this secret to hold over people, that he doesn't, that he's got to continue living, you
yeah.
know?
Well, especially because he went through that whole kind of like swan song sign off with people. It's like,
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
dying, I'm gonna say what I want.
And he's relieved, he's relieved. His best days are behind him.
Yeah.
He gained some notoriety as an animator 20 years prior to the film happening, to the story of the film, and he's done. He's it's not getting better, it's getting worse. So he's ready to go. So when he finds out he's not dying, it's like, oh shit, I got to keep doing this somehow.
And is that part of like this character because it's something we just know about him. Like we don't really see him animating. We don't see other than him kind of pitching this movie idea that doesn't go anywhere. We don't see much of that. Is that fun for you as an actor to kind of have on the back burner, knowing that like, yes, this guy was once famous. So in scenes where I like maybe don't have that much power, I can still always have the idea that like I was famous when I started here.
Yeah, I mean, he is skating on thin ice, uh off the idea of something he did 20 years ago, you know, but also crushed by the fact that he has never realized what people told him was his potential.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this dichotomy of, know, wildly out of control ego and an inferiority complex.
Yeah.
He's got both, and that grounds him. I think that's what makes him accessible to the audience of the film and also likable to some extent is, oh, we can clearly see that this egomaniac hates himself.
Yeah.
That's what works, I think, about the film.
Oh, 100%. And also, I have to say, not to blow smoke up your ass, but you have a way of delivering these kind of dry comedic lines that
Mm.
just is like you stop for a minute and then you start laughing because you're like, that's actually one of the funniest things I've ever heard. But it's just that dry comedy. And I really love that this movie embraces it in
Mhm.
like and it builds it up so then when we do kind of see him break, it's hilarious, but also very cathartic to watch happen for you.
Thank you.
Of course, I was like,
I
"No,
like
cool."
that.
But when you do have that build up, especially when it goes to like the eulogy and things like that,
Mhm.
do you kind of take note of like, okay, well, this is like a progression of his just like everything going on in his life, or do you just completely keep that away from your mind and focus on the scene in question?
No, you always have to know where you're at in the story. You know, you lose that, you're in big trouble because at some point it becomes a logic issue. I hate logic issues in films. Why in Infinity, or no, I'm sorry, why in Endgame, for instance, we meet Ronan, the Hawkeye's alter ego, who is chopping the heads off of people out of rage and anger. And then the next time we see him, he's Hawkeye and he's making jokes and he's quips. And you
Yeah.
just go, whoa, whoa, wasn't this the traumatized guy? Like, who was chopping people's heads off. Now he's just being funny again. Like that's weird to me. That's a logic issue with that film that bothers me. And so you really have to know where you are in a performance in terms of the progression of the story. And you know, how much angrier is he? How much more satisfied is he? Where, you know, how much more paranoid is he at this point than he is in the beginning of the film? You got to create an arc if there isn't necessarily one so obviously there. I think with this script, you know, Bob's an interesting writer, Bob Byington, in that he sort of wants performance to fill in the blanks. He provides blanks in his writing so that a performer can come in and fill them in, and that's wonderful. That's brilliant. That's a stroke of brilliance on his part. And so I had to do that, and that was the fun challenge.
Yeah. And I loved it a lot. Before I leave, I do have to say, because it is my dream movie and I've tweeted about it way too much. I want you, Oscar Isaac, and Jake Johnson to play brothers on a road trip movie with your estranged father, Mandy Patinkin, more than anything on this planet. It's
Mm.
a dream casting to see you all just being
I
brothers.
wonder if it'll ever happen. I mean, I'd love to, you know, do that, but I think a better movie is that I play an Oscar Isaac impersonator.
Kind
And
of like Bubba
that
Hotep.
Jake Johnson and I play competing Oscar Isaac impersonators. I like that idea.
Yeah, that would 100% watch that on repeat if it
That's right.
happened. But thank you for talking with me. I really appreciate it, and I can't wait for people to get to
Sure.
see Lousy Carter.
Thanks, Rachel. Appreciate it big time.
Have a
Nice
great
meeting
one.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.